Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Yahweh is the true, holy, and powerful name of the Heavenly Father. Bahashem, meaning in the name. Yahushai is the true, holy, and powerful name of His only begotten Son, who is the Savior of the nation of Israel, starting off with the elect within the nation of Israel, and Israel consisting of so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans, as well as Israelite foreigners scattered abroad that may look like the nations where you've been scattered to, but are Israelites. And I also want to give double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect, pushing out this word in all sincerity and in truth. All right, this is the brother you call from the GMS branch on Des Moines. I welcome back at you with another lesson inspired by the Holy Spirit, Harakakwadash. And not quite sure what I want to entitle this lesson, but you know, the Spirit had me and the big bro Madathi at the head of the camp here in Des Moines. And one thing that, you know, we spoke about is making ourselves available, you know, especially, you know, with brothers that are within camps and you have an office in the camp, remembering, you know, the same type of love and sacrifices that were made for you to obtain this knowledge. All right, for brothers making themselves available for you, showing that same type of sacrifice, love, and commitment, all right, for the next man, all right, for the rest of the flock. You know, we talked about, you know, different examples, like what brothers had to sacrifice, you know, just to feed bros, you know. I know it was at one point where, yeah, I'll specifically, I know one point, you know, it was just Pawaria, Yeshaya, Pawaria, who we affectionately call Pops out here in Des Moines, Yeshaya, Madathia, and myself, and then we had two other bros that were on the other side of the line who, you know, eventually ended up being in the camp. And, you know, during that time, I remember, you know, I forget what time that the big bro Madathi had to go to work, but, you know, he had to go to work earlier in the day. I'm gonna just, I think it was around maybe around 3 o'clock or something like that, you know. But, you know, that brother would go to work, you know, and then we would be dealing with those bros. I can't remember what time. It might have been around like 6 o'clock or something like that, you know, dealing with those bros. And I'm talking about dealing, like, in the spirit, going over precepts, breaking down different things, questioning Jake, like Jake getting grilled, Jake getting scoffed, like, you know, going through all that, you know, all the way up until maybe like 10 o'clock, I'll say roughly around 10 o'clock, maybe 11 o'clock, when I would go and scoop up the big bro Madathia and pick him up, you know, after his long shift, and I'm taking him straight to class. And then those brothers would deal, you know, in the spirit till like 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. All right, and then we had camp Saturday, you know, and that oftentimes I had to work, you know, so a lot of the times I'll go scoop up the bro, you know, come back, I'm gonna scoop up the bro, take him to go deal with the rest of the bros, you know. Yeshaya is still dealing, you know, and everything like that. I can't remember if Pops, you know, was there at that time, you know, at certain of those, at that point, you know, his schedule was what it was, but you know, he'll be up, you know, dealing after work until 3 a.m. and then get up, you know, the next morning, and, you know, hey, we'll be getting ready for camp the next day, right? So just using that as an example, and that's a very small example, especially when you hear about the stories of what, you know, the apostles, the hours that they had to travel just to get to camp and deal with, you know, go to school and, you know, this and that and the third, go to the old school, and the diligence and work that they had to do, and that was nothing compared. But just giving it as an example of, like, brothers sacrifice sleep, brothers sacrifice time with their family, brothers sacrifice, you know, opportunities, or rearrange their schedule just to make themselves available for, you know, the brothers and everything like that. And as we grow and we get into these positions of now you 3, 4, 5, 6 years in the faith, and, you know, now you're in that position to where you have to make those sacrifices for the next man so that they can, you know, gain wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, so that they can be brought up on a level, you know. So we have to keep that in mind. We're quitting those good turns, like, you know, it was done for us when we came in, you know, starting off with our elders and apostles, all right, and we have to show that same type of effort and energy, man, all right. There's things that we will have to give up, you know. There's time that you're going to have to give up to feed the Lord's flock. The scriptures talk about having to, knowing the estate of thy flock, all right, and having care for the flock in which the Lord has made us overseers, you know. And the scriptures also talk about how Nehemiah, he said, Lord, remember, you know, me for the works that I did for thy house and for the offices thereof, roughly paraphrasing it. So we have to ask ourselves, you know, what work are we putting in towards the office of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai? And of course, we're going to do what we know we got to do. We know we need to be putting up our own personal lessons. All right. We know we need to be doing our own reading and studying. Like, you know, it gets to a point to where it's like, that's a given. That shouldn't even be told. You know, it shouldn't even have to get on a brother at a certain point of like, hey, brother, you did your lessons, or, you know, you did, you know, this and then the third. Those things should, you know, get to a point to where it's automatic, it's ingrained in your schedule. It's a habit to make sure that those things is taken care of through the Spirit. All right. But once, you know, you get to that point, you know, it doesn't stay there in a stagnation. There, you know, it gets to a point to where, you know, we should be looking to make ourselves more available, all right, or orchestrating, or, you know, setting up our schedule in a position to where we can do more for the body, you know. And you know, one thing that was spoken about is that we spoke about on the phone is having a desire towards those different things, you know, having a desire to sacrifice, having the desire to be around bros. And it ain't about just you getting fed. You know, sometimes, you know, you can maybe be going to class and, you know, it's like, all right, yeah, you know, we gonna go over this, go over that, kind of know this, or whatever attitude that may be there. But keep in mind that it ain't about, you know, just you being fed. Maybe your spirit, you know, you need to be there to help feed another brother. All right. You know, your input, you know, whatever the Lord puts on your spirit needs to be said. But if you're not making yourself available to be there for brothers, all right, then, you know, those nuggets aren't going to be there. Or for the other brother to gain from your experience and what you've been through, or whatever the case may be. You never know what the Spirit is going to do. All right. But we know that it says when 2 or 3 are gathered in thy name, there I am in the midst thereof. And we have to remember that and believe that, because it's easy to, you know, you be around bros and you get used to brothers, and you can take for granted, all right, the men around you. All right. I'll say I've been guilty of that on many occasions. All right. Taking for granted, you know, the opportunity to be around bros. All right, to go to classes or whatever the case it may be. Like, nah, like that's a time where, you know, the Lord is there. Where 2 or 3 and gathered in my name, there I am in the midst. And the scriptures talk about which forsake not the assembling of yourselves, as the manner of some is, knowing that with these type of sacrifices the Lord is well pleased. Roughly paraphrasing that precept. All right, so the sacrifices that you have to make, all right, what you have to give up to make yourself available, to, you know, you have to give up, you know, your leisure time, or you want to just do this and then the third, but you give that up, all right, for Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai, for the body. Like, the Lord delights in that. All right, the Lord delights in that, man. You know, so we want to remain in that mentality of, you know, sowing to the Spirit, you know, being there, you know, for brothers to you know, to be able to tug on you, or to reach out to you, or to, you know, be around your spirit and everything like that, and so on and so forth. Don't isolate yourself. All right. You know, don't isolate yourself, man. You know, at times, you know, depending on brother spirits, you know, we can isolate ourselves or whatever the case may be. That's not a good look. And once again, if you're isolating yourself, it's hard for you to benefit the rest of the body. All right. And being hands-on. See, we have an opportunity to be hands-on with brothers, you know, brothers that are in the camp and everything like that. And that is, you know, that's a beautiful thing. All right. Once again, that we can take for granted. You know, so it's just a few things in the spirit, just based off of the conversation that we had, that, you know, I just wanted to put out there through the spirit, just, you know, food for thought, things to, you know, to keep in mind. All right. Remember what was sacrificed for you to gain this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. All right. Well, you know, what brothers may have given up. And a lot of those times, you know, brothers don't even know. All right. A lot of the times brothers don't even know what had to be given up just to be there at classes, or, you know, what they had to sacrifice, or, you know, how they got to deal with hell at home because of this or that and the third, because they spending so much time with the brothers, and brothers don't give a damn anyways. You know what I'm saying? All right. The hell that they might have had to suffer through. You know, brothers may have given up certain job opportunities. I know that when it comes down to job opportunities, you know, brothers, first thing they're looking at, okay, well, am I going to be able to still make class with this job? Am I still going to be able to go to camp? All right, I can't. Well, all right, well then shit, let me see if they're, you know, let me pray to the Lord, see if he can open something else up, you know? And at certain times, you know, Jay got to do what they do, but this is what's at the forefront of the mind of brothers, man. You know, let me make sure that my schedule is orchestrated around the ministry, so that I can be available to be there with brothers. You know what I'm saying? So that I can be around, and so on and so forth. So, you know, let's keep these things in mind, man, and, you know, requite that good turn. You know, the same effort and energy that was sowed, all right, from the brothers that help feed you, you know, show that same effort and energy for the rest of the bros that are coming in behind you. All right. you know, to teach them the certain things that you learn from your experience walking in the faith, and, you know, not just breakdowns and everything like that. Certain things, you know, it just needs to be a perspective that's given, or experience, or a story. You know, I went through this, I went through that. And, you know, it's been times where I just had, you know, certain conversations just in the spirit, just running into a brother. You know, just running into a brother like, damn, that's the spirit, man. Next thing you know, we have a conversation in the spirit. And then the brother, you know, hit me up like, hey, man, the water for that conversation, man, that really, you know, soothed my spirit. Or, man, I needed that, you know, that counsel or that advice. Or, you know, it's in this call, Allah Yamla Yahba Shem Yahweh. You know, that's all of the Lord. But if we're not making ourselves available now, like I mentioned, you know, the spirit directed, you know, brother's steps to cross paths at certain times randomly. But if there's an opportunity to link up with bros, or, you know, you just, you know, you got a little free time. And, you know, sometimes the thought of that free time is not just to, damn, I got free time, I can just kick my feet up. Now, sometimes like, yeah, the Lord opened up that window to sow in the spirit somehow. And it may not just be with reading. It may not just be with studying. It may be like, let me hit up bros and see what Jake is on, man. Hey, brothers, I got a little extra time, man. You know, Jake want to get together and link up, you know. Maybe do a lesson, or just talk in the spirit, you know, or I'm finna go do this or go do that. A brother want to tag along, or, you know, because we're coming into some very rough times, and we got. All right, we can't trust nobody outside of this faith, to be real. You know, you can't trust nobody that don't fear the Lord, because if they don't fear the Lord, then it don't matter. Who knows what they're going to do, all right? Especially when pressures are applied. All right, you don't know nobody, you know, if that fear ain't in, then, you know, you never know what somebody can do. All right, so we got, all right, the body of Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai against the world, right? So these connections and these conversations and, you know, being able to be around one another, man, that's a heavy thing in the spirit. And we don't want to neglect that, you know, and we want to take our job seriously, the offices that we have, you know, the positions that we have, the responsibilities that we have, you know, and what's the word, man? You know, really just take it seriously, man. All right. You know, just take it seriously, man, and really be hands-on. And I'm thinking about King Arthur, you know, the movie King Arthur, the most recent one that came out. You know, it was like when he put one hand on the sword, you know, he couldn't control it. But when he put two hands on that sword, all right, then he was able to, you know, pretty much go in slow-mo and go through his enemies, man. But I'm just bringing that up as an example, because when he put two hands on that sword, all right, then that's when the real power was there. So when you all in and you got both hands in this ministry, and, you know, you going to work, like, now I'm putting two hands on this and I'm going to work, there's a whole nother energy, a whole nother level that, you know, the spirit, you know, has us move in or grow into, or, you know, levels us up in, when, you know, you putting all the effort and energy into it, as opposed to just kind of coasting, or, you know, being content, or when you're really showing the Lord that, no, I really desire to grow. I really desire to be on another level, and so on and so forth. And you're making the necessary sacrifices to do that. Watch how the Lord works, you know, watch how the Lord works, you know, watch how the Lord invests in you when you invest in him. All right. In your spirit, giving you more fortitude, giving you stability, giving you, you know, leveling you up, and, you know, increasing your faith, and all these different things, man, increasing your judgment. All right. To judge matters, to judge yourself better, and these spiritual things that are going to be necessary, especially in the times that we're entering into. All right, that's going to help you in your walk, especially in the times of Jacob's trouble, as things are going to get hectic and rocky. Look how the Lord, you know, increases you, you know, as you're increasing in the spirit and sowing into him. But I'm ended right there through the spirit, Lord's what I was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai B'Shem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect. Pushing out this word in all sincerity and in truth. With that, I'm going to say shalom.